is accused of gunning down a woman in League City, and her family says he harassed her for years. In fact, court records show Isaiah Johnson was out on probation for beating Joanna Walton over the head with a gun. ABC 13's Luke Jones.
She kissed her son goodbye that morning, got in her silver Toyota, and drove to her apartment complex like she'd done 100 times before. She had no idea a red SUV was already waiting for her. 2 minutes. That's all it took. 2 minutes between Joanna Walton parking her car and 11 gunshots ringing out in broad daylight in a place she was supposed to be safe. Before we get into this one, if you're new here, welcome to Shadow Crime. I put out real cases like this one regularly, and honestly, this channel only grows because people like you take 2 seconds to hit subscribe and tap that bell icon. It genuinely helps more than you'd think, and it means these stories and these victims don't just get forgotten. Okay, let's get into it. So, let's talk about who Joanna was. She was 37 years old, living in League City, Texas. She was a mother. She had a son. And by every account from the people who knew her, she was trying to build a peaceful life for herself and her child after leaving a relationship that, according to her family, had already turned violent once before. Because here's the thing you need to understand going into this story. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't some random act of violence that came out of nowhere. Joanna's family has been very clear about that. They say this was a result of years of alleged abuse and harassment from her ex. And when you hear what happened before this day, you'll understand why they're so angry and why they're asking questions that, honestly, deserve answers. The man at the center of this is Isaiah Johnson, 38 years old, from Magnolia, Texas. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't someone who slipped through the cracks unnoticed. He was Joanna's ex-boyfriend. He was the father of her son. He was someone who had already shown, in the clearest way possible, exactly what he was capable of. Back in 2023, police say Johnson tried to shoot Joanna. Let that sink in for a second. He allegedly pointed a gun at her and pulled the trigger. The gun jammed. So instead, he pistol whipped her. That's not speculation. That's what police documented. And for that, for trying to kill her and then beating her with the weapon when it failed, he was sentenced to 30 days in jail, 10 years of probation, and a mandatory battering intervention program. 30 days for attempted murder that turned into a pistol whipping. I want you to hold on to that number, because as we go deeper into this story, you're going to see exactly what happened after he walked out of that jail cell. You're going to see the warning signs that piled up, one after another, and you're going to have to ask yourself the same question Joanna's family is asking right now. How does something like this happen again? Stick with me, because it gets worse before it gets to the truth.
Man is accused of gunning down a woman in League City, and her family says he harassed her for years. In fact, court records show Isaiah Johnson was out on probation for beating Joanna Walton over the head with a gun. ABC 13's Luke Jones has a closer look at the troubled history and new video showing what happened.
It's just after 2 p.m. Monday at the Harbor Walk Apartments on FM 518 when Joanna Walton drives up in this silver car. Almost immediately, this red SUV pulls out of a nearby carport and drives over to where Walton's parked. 2 minutes later, you can hear several faint pops, witnesses say were gunshots. The red SUV's then seen reversing. It remains on the scene for about 30 seconds before driving away. During that time, a witness says the shooter peered through the open back window of the victim's car before returning to his SUV. League City police say 38-year-old Isaiah Johnson turned himself in to the Galveston Police Department about 2 hours later.
Are you requesting a court-appointed attorney?
Yes.
Johnson's bond set at $360,000 during a court hearing this morning. According to court documents, he and the victim share a son together. Joanna Walton's family says he's been harassing her for years following their breakup. In 2023, police say he tried to shoot her, but when the gun jammed, pistol whipped her instead. Records show he pleaded guilty and got 30 days in jail and 10 years probation. He was also required to complete a battering intervention program. But last July, while still on probation, police say Johnson broke into Walton's apartment. An affidavit detailing a string of messages he's accused of texting her, including that he doesn't want their son to see her again, and, quote, I don't care if I throw away my life to make that happen. Also, your face was so beautiful with all that blood coming down, and you crying. Police issued a warrant for his arrest for the burglary, but it wasn't served until he turned himself in on the murder charge. The victim's mother and sister back home in Amarillo, when we spoke with them on the phone earlier, they're frustrated with how that assault case was handled back in 2023. They say probation didn't go far enough. This time around, they're hoping Johnson faces stiffer consequences. In League City, Luke Jones, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Let's pick back up where we left off, because after that 2023 case, things did not get better. They got quieter, and quiet in cases like this is almost never a good sign. While Johnson was still on probation, still supposedly being supervised, still supposedly accountable to court, he broke into Joanna's apartment. This is July 2025 we're talking about now, not some far-off history. Less than a year before she was killed. And this is where it gets chilling, because we actually know what he said to her. According to the affidavit, Johnson texted Joanna and told her he didn't want their son seeing her again. And then he said this word for word: "I don't care if I throw away my life to make that happen." Think about that sentence for a second. That's not anger. That's not a man having a bad day. That's someone telling you, flat out, exactly what he's willing to do. He's telling you the ending before it happens. But it doesn't stop there. He's also accused of sending Joanna another message, one that's honestly hard to even read out loud. He referenced her face being beautiful with blood coming down it and her crying. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's a normal thing an ex-partner says. That's a threat wrapped up as a memory. That's someone reminding her of pain he already caused and hinting at more. So what happened after this break-in? After these messages? You'd think, given his history, given the 2023 case, given everything on paper, that law enforcement would move fast, right? In August 2025, the Galveston County District Attorney's Office filed an arrest warrant for Johnson on that burglary charge. And then nothing happened. That warrant sat there, unserved, for almost an entire year. Here's what makes this even harder to accept. Johnson's probation had been transferred to Harris County, so Harris County was supposed to be the one keeping tabs on him. But when reporters asked Harris County's Community Supervision and Corrections Department about that warrant, they said they never received it, never got it. It never landed on their desk. So naturally, the next question is, well, did Galveston County ever send it over? Did anyone follow up? And when ABC 13 asked the Galveston County DA's office directly whether they had notified Harris County about this warrant, their answer was 2 words. No comment. No comment. While a man with a documented history of trying to shoot his ex-partner was walking around free, on probation, with an active warrant nobody was chasing. I want you to sit with that for a second, because we're about to get to the day everything caught up with Joanna. And once you hear how it happened, you're going to understand exactly why her family is demanding answers about that missing year. Now we get to the day itself. And I want to walk you through this slowly, because the details here matter. It's a Monday afternoon in League City, Texas. Around 2 o'clock, Joanna pulls her silver Toyota Corolla into the parking lot of the Harbor Walk Apartments on FM 518. This is her home. This is supposed to be the one place where she can breathe, where she's not looking over her shoulder. Surveillance cameras catch her car coming through the lot. And almost immediately, within seconds really, a red SUV pulls out of a nearby carport. Investigators say that SUV was being driven by Johnson. He wasn't just in the area. He was waiting, positioned, watching for her. That SUV drives straight toward where Joanna had just parked. About 2 minutes pass. 2 minutes. And then witnesses say they hear several faint pops. Gunshots. One witness told police he saw a man walk right up to Joanna's car and shoot her 11 times. 11 times. I want you to think about what that means. That's not one shot in a moment of panic. That's not a struggle that went wrong. That is someone standing there close enough to see her and firing again and again and again. And here's the part that honestly still gets me. After the shooting, the SUV doesn't immediately speed off. It reverses, but stays on the scene for another 30 seconds or so. And during that time, Witnesses say the shooter leaned in, looked through the open back window of Joanna's car, like he was checking, making sure. Then he drives away. When police arrive, they find Joanna behind the wheel of her Corolla with multiple gunshot wounds. She's gone. Investigators quickly identify Johnson as a person of interest and learn he fled the scene in a Hyundai Santa Fe. Law enforcement agencies across the area are notified to be on the lookout for him and that vehicle. And then, about 2 hours later, something happens that a lot of people find hard to wrap their heads around. Johnson doesn't run. He doesn't hide. He drives himself to the Galveston Police Department, and he turns himself in. He surrenders without incident. Think about that contrast for a second. The same man who allegedly stood over Joanna's car and fired 11 shots, who watched to make sure the job was done, calmly walks into a police station a couple hours later and hands himself over. He's booked into the Galveston County Jail. His bond is eventually set at $360,000. And somewhere in all of this, there's a little boy who no longer has his mother, and whose father is the man accused of taking her from him. We're getting close to the part of the story that I think you really need to hear. The part where all of these missed warnings, that unserved warrant, that ignored history, all of it collides into one unavoidable question.
A mother's life ended in a parking lot, but questions remain about whether warning signs were missed long before the deadly shooting. Court records show the man accused of killing her was on probation for attacking her years ago, then accused of breaking into her apartment while still on probation.
An arrest warrant was issued nearly a year ago, but it was never fulfilled until he surrendered on the murder charge, according to court records. Tonight, ABC 13 reporter Sarah Alshaik is pressing authorities for answers. She joins us live from the Galveston County DA's office. Sarah?
Here we have multiple questions, like why was the arrest warrant for that burglary charge never fulfilled, and were probation officials ever notified of that warrant in the first place? League City Police say on Monday, 38-year-old Isaiah Johnson turned himself in just hours after shooting and killing Joanna Walton outside her League City apartment complex. According to court documents, the two had a child but were no longer together. But as we dug into court records, we found a history of violence, threats, probation violations, and an arrest warrant that sat unserved. It all started in 2023 when police say Johnson pleaded guilty to aggravated assault with a deadly weapon after allegedly trying to shoot Walton, but pistol whipped her instead after the gun jammed. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 10 years probation. While still on probation last July, police say Johnson broke into Walton's apartment. Police issued an arrest warrant for the burglary in August 2025, but records show it wasn't fulfilled until Johnson turned himself in Monday on the murder charge. It isn't clear if there were any attempts by law enforcement to arrest Johnson for the burglary warrant. And when it comes to his probation, court records show it was transferred to Harris County. But the county's Community Supervision and Corrections Department tells ABC 13 they never received the arrest warrant for the burglary. So we went to the Galveston County DA's office, who filed that arrest warrant. When I asked if they ever notified Harris County of Johnson's warrant, they said, quote, no comment. I also reached out to the League City Police Department asking about their efforts to try and arrest Johnson on the burglary charge. I have not heard back from them yet. As far as Johnson, he is still in jail on a $360,000 bond. Reporting live in Galveston County, Sarah Alshaik, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
So here's where we land with everything we know right now. The breakdown in this case isn't really a mystery buried in secrets. It's sitting right out in the open, in paperwork nobody followed up on. A warrant filed in August 2025. A warrant that was supposed to bring Johnson in on that burglary charge. A warrant that just sat there untouched for nearly a year while he was still walking around free. Harris County says they never got it. Galveston County won't say whether they ever sent it. And somewhere in that gap, in that silence between two counties, Joanna kept living her life, kept raising her son, probably having no real idea that the system and the protector had quietly dropped the ball. That's the part of this case that sits heaviest with me, honestly. It's not that nobody saw this coming. People did see it coming. The 2023 attack was documented. The break-in was documented. The threatening texts were documented. Every single warning sign was written down somewhere, in some file, on some desk. And still, Somehow, it wasn't enough to stop what happened in that parking lot. Johnson is now facing a murder charge, and he remains in custody on that $360,000 bond. The investigation is still active, and there are still things we don't know. We don't know exactly why that warrant fell through the cracks. We don't know what happens next for Joanna's son, or who's caring for him now. And we don't know if this case is going to push any changes in how these warrants get communicated between counties, so this doesn't happen to somebody else. But I think this case forces you to sit with some uncomfortable questions. How many warning signs does a woman have to give before somebody actually acts on them? If a man tries to shoot you and then beats you when the gun jams, and only gets 30 days for it, what message does that send him about what is allowed to survive? And what message does it send her about how seriously her life is being taken? And when the system has every piece of information it needs, the assault, the break-in, the threats, the warrant, what does it actually take for someone to fall through those cracks and end up dead in her own parking lot? I don't have easy answers to any of that. I don't think anyone does right now. But I think Joanna deserves to have her story told honestly. And her son deserves to grow up knowing that people paid attention, that people asked why. If this case affected you the way it affected me, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, tap that bell icon so you don't miss the next one, and let me know in the comments what you think should have been done differently here. This is Shadow Crime, and I'll see you in the next one.